Savannah posted a new statement on social media revealing the Guthrie family is now offering a $1 million reward in the case of their missing mother. We want to play that for you now in its entirety.
Hi there. I'm coming on to say it is day 24 since our mom was taken in the dark of night from her bed. And every hour and minute and second and every long night has been agony since then of worrying about her and fearing for her and aching for her. And most of all, just missing her, just missing her. We know that millions of you have been praying. So many people have been praying of every faith and no faith at all, praying for her return. And we feel those prayers. Please keep praying without ceasing. We still believe. We still believe in a miracle. We still believe that she can come home. Hope against hope. As my sister says, we are blowing on the embers of hope. We also know that she may be lost. She may already be gone. She may have already gone home to the Lord that she loves and is dancing in heaven with her mom and her dad and with her beloved brother Pierce and with our daddy. And if this is what is to be, then we will accept it. But we need to know where she is. We need her to come home.
The silence of the Catalina foothills was shattered not by a sound, but by a sudden digital darkness. On the night of Saturday, January 31, 2026, Nancy Guthrie, a sharp and independent 84-year-old, had just returned from a quiet dinner with her daughter, Annie, and son-in-law, Tommaso Shani. The evening had been unremarkable, the kind of routine family interaction that anchors a life. Shani dropped Nancy off at her home around 9:48 p.m., watching as her garage door lowered, sealing her safely inside. For the next few hours, the world assumed Nancy was resting, her home protected by the high-tech security systems common in her upscale neighborhood. However, the known facts of that night began to unravel exactly at 1:47 a.m. on Sunday, February 1. Surveillance footage, later recovered by the FBI, captured a chilling sight: a masked and gloved individual approaching Nancy's front door. The figure didn't hesitate. With a practiced motion, they reached out and disconnected the doorbell camera, plunging the home's digital eyes into blindness. By the time Sunday morning arrived and Nancy failed to appear at her local church, the concern had shifted to a frantic search. When family members arrived at the house, they found a scene that Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos would later describe as not a search mission, but a crime scene. The immediate twist that changed everything was the discovery of bloodstains near the entrance of the home. Forensic testing confirmed the DNA belonged to Nancy. This wasn't a case of a woman with limited mobility wandering off into the desert. It was a forced removal. As the investigation entered its fourth week in late February 2026, a new motive began to surface, moving away from a simple robbery. Items of high value, Nancy's car, her wallet, and her cell phone, were left untouched inside the house. This was targeted. This was surgical. And as of 1 minute ago, the pressure between local authorities and federal investigators has reached a boiling point, with the FBI moving to take a more dominant role in a case that has paralyzed the Tucson community. As the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie entered its second day, the technical team from the FBI's Phoenix field office uncovered a detail that chilled even the most seasoned investigators. It wasn't just that the doorbell camera had been physically disconnected at 1:47 a.m. It was the clinical precision of what followed. At exactly 2:00 a.m., the remote monitoring system for Nancy's pacemaker, a device she relied on for her fragile heart, suddenly lost its connection to the base station located in her bedroom. In an age of interconnected health data, this was a digital flatline. It suggested two harrowing possibilities. Either Nancy had been moved outside the range of the home's transmitter, or the device itself had suffered a catastrophic failure. The known facts were shifting. This was no longer just a missing persons case. It was a high-stakes race against biology. Without her daily, life-sustaining medications, which were found untouched on her kitchen counter alongside her hearing aids and glasses, the window for a safe recovery was closing by the hour. Sheriff Chris Nanos revealed in a tense briefing that forensic analysts had discovered a motion sensor trigger from a secondary camera at 2:12 a.m., just minutes after the pacemaker signal vanished. However, because the subscription for that specific camera had lapsed, there was no cloud footage, only a notification that something or someone had moved through the backyard toward the desert wash. The twist that changed the investigation's trajectory came from the lab. While initial searches of the immediate property found only Nancy's blood, a specialized K-9 unit alerted to a discarded blue surgical-style glove found snagged on a cactus nearly 2 miles from the home. 1 minute ago, the preliminary lab results arrived. The glove contained a mixed profile. While it bore traces of the desert environment, it also carried a minute amount of foreign DNA that did not match anyone in the National CODIS database. This phantom was someone who had never been arrested, someone who had lived under the radar, and someone who knew exactly how to navigate the blind spots of a high-end security grid. The third week of the investigation brought a revelation that sent a chill through the Catalina foothills. While the world had been focused on the grainy footage from the night of the abduction, the FBI's digital forensics unit in Quantico made a discovery that changed the entire nature of the case. 1 minute ago, investigators confirmed that the masked, armed figure seen tampering with the doorbell camera at 1:47 a.m. on February 1 wasn't making their first visit. A deep dive into the encrypted metadata of Nancy's home security system, data previously thought to be corrupted, revealed that the same individual had been recorded at her doorstep on 2 separate nights in late January. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. It was a cold, calculated, dry run. The suspect, described by the FBI as a male of average build, approximately 59 to 510, wearing an Ozark Trail backpack and a visible handgun holster, had been studying the home's defenses while Nancy slept just feet away. The known facts about the motive were also thrown into chaos this week. While the Pima County Sheriff's Department initially leaned toward a burglary gone wrong, the delivery of 2 purported ransom notes to major news outlets has forced a shift in strategy. These notes, demanding upwards of $6 million, have introduced a terrifying money-making scheme theory. However, the FBI remains cautious, with Special Agent Robin Dreek suggesting these letters might be spearphishing by opportunists rather than the actual captors. Adding to the tension is a high-profile tussle between local and federal authorities. Sheriff Chris Nanos admitted in a recent interview that the lab is struggling with mixed DNA, found at the scene, samples where Nancy's genetic material is intertwined with a second, unidentified profile. The delay in sorting these samples has sparked public outcry, leading Savannah Guthrie herself to post an emotional video offering a $1 million reward for her mother's recovery. The clock is ticking against Nancy's health, as the FBI reportedly begins coordinating with authorities in Mexico, following leads that the 84-year-old may have been moved across the border. By the morning of February 24, 2026, the investigation into Nancy Guthrie's disappearance had reached a fever pitch of desperation. Savannah Guthrie, having stepped away from her anchor desk at the Today show and even skipping coverage of the 2026 Winter Olympics, took to social media with a message that broke the collective heart of the nation. In an emotional video, she announced a $1 million family-funded reward for her mother's safe return. "We still believe in a miracle," she whispered, her voice steady but her eyes betraying the weight of 24 days of agonizing silence. This massive reward was a strategic pivot. Up until this point, the FBI and local authorities had reportedly advised the family to hold off on such a high-stakes offer to avoid a flood of noise and false leads. However, with the investigation stalling, the family decided to take matters into their own hands. The impact was immediate. Within hours, the FBI reported receiving over 750 new tips. The influx of information has forced a massive logistical shift, as agents scramble to separate legitimate breakthroughs from the inevitable bounty hunters and opportunists looking for a payday. The most shocking update, however, came not from a tip, but from a forensic lab. 1 minute ago, news broke that the FBI is grappling with a catastrophic data failure. While they successfully recovered doorbell footage of the masked suspect with the Ozark Trail backpack, they discovered the files were missing something critical: timestamps. Without them, the FBI cannot definitively say if the footage of the suspect tampering with the camera happened on the night of the abduction or during a previous scouting mission. This digital amnesia has thrown the timeline into chaos. Furthermore, reports have surfaced that the $1 million reward wasn't just for information. It was a response to a specific, newly revealed detail that Nancy may have been taken in the dark of night from her bed. If true, this shatters the theory that she had answered the door to an acquaintance, suggesting instead a terrifyingly silent home invasion that occurred while the rest of the world was asleep. By the final week of February 2026, the secluded Catalina foothills neighborhood where Nancy Guthrie had lived for years was transformed into a high-stakes command center. The once quiet Skyline Drive was no longer defined by its desert views, but by the hum of satellite trucks and the glare of forensic lighting. 1 minute ago, a fresh wave of tension erupted as the Pima County Sheriff's Department officially expressed open frustration with a new obstacle: the YouTube siege. Over a dozen true crime streamers have set up permanent encampments on the street, live streaming the house 24/7, and according to Sheriff Chris Nanos, they are turning every minor investigative movement into a breaking news frenzy that risks tipped-off suspects. The most disturbing factual update to surface this week involves a discrepancy in the official timeline. While the public has focused on the 1:47 a.m. camera disconnect, a new report from federal investigators indicates that over 50,000 tips have flooded their systems, but one specific lead has taken precedence. A black backpack was discovered by a group of volunteer searchers in the dense desert brush on Sunday. While it initially sparked hope, the FBI released a clarifying statement. The bag was not the same Ozark Trail brand carried by the masked intruder seen in the doorbell footage. However, the items found inside, which authorities are keeping strictly confidential, have led the FBI to expand their search radius toward the Rio Rico area near the Mexican border. The motive remains the case's most haunting mystery. In a recent interview, Sheriff Nanos admitted that while a Bitcoin ransom demand was sent to media outlets earlier in the month, investigators are now questioning if the money was ever the primary goal. Is it for money, or is it for revenge? He mused. This shift in thinking follows the official clearing of the Guthrie family, including Savannah, her siblings, and her son-in-law Tommaso Shini, as suspects. With the family officially ruled out, the new motive theory suggests a terrifying possibility: that Nancy was targeted because of her proximity to her famous daughter, or perhaps as a pawn in a larger, organized, money-making venture, by groups operating in the high drug trafficking corridors of southern Arizona. As the calendar turned to February 26, 2026, the investigation into Nancy Guthrie's abduction entered a phase of high-tech forensic warfare. The most significant factual update, emerging just 1 minute ago, centers on the digital profiling of the suspect. For weeks, the public has been haunted by the image of the masked man in the Ozark Trail backpack. However, the FBI's Operational Technology Division has now confirmed a detail that completely changes our understanding of the perpetrator's behavior. The suspect did not just arrive at 1:47 a.m. on the night of the crime. He had been captured on Nancy's Nest doorbell camera multiple times in the weeks leading up to February 1. This revelation shatters the theory of a random home invasion. One specific image released by federal agents shows the suspect at Nancy's front door without a backpack, standing just feet away from the glass. This suggests a chilling level of premeditation, a stalking phase, where the abductor was testing the home's response times and the sensitivity of its motion sensors. This predator wasn't just looking for a house to rob, he was looking for this house, and specifically for Nancy. While the search has expanded, the physical evidence remains frustratingly silent. A pair of black gloves found by a couple in the desert near Campbell Avenue, approximately 2 miles from the Guthrie home, initially offered a glimmer of hope. The gloves appeared ripped and stained with what looked like 2 different colors of blood. However, the Pima County Sheriff's Department has just confirmed that the DNA profile extracted from these gloves, along with the DNA from the previously found blue surgical glove, has produced no matches in the national database. The Phantom has no criminal record, no military service on file, and no genetic footprint in the system. As the FBI begins canvassing local Walmart locations to trace the purchase of the specific Ozark Trail backpack, the reality is setting in. They are chasing a ghost who knows exactly how to stay invisible in a digital world. As the final week of February 2026 winds down, the investigation into Nancy Guthrie's abduction has pivoted from the quiet suburbs of Tucson to the rugged, high-stakes corridors of the U.S.-Mexico border. 1 minute ago, a high-level source within the FBI confirmed that signal sniffing technology, sophisticated equipment designed to detect the unique electronic frequency of Nancy's pacemaker, has been deployed in the Rio Rico area. This tactical shift follows a series of unconfirmed sightings of a blacked-out SUV, matching the description of a vehicle seen speeding away from the Catalina foothills in the early hours of February 1. The most jarring factual update involves a deepening rift between local and federal authorities. While the FBI has leaned into the cartel link theory, suggesting Nancy may have been taken as a high-value asset in a money-making scheme due to her daughter's international profile, Sheriff Chris Nanos has remained steadfast in a different direction. In a briefing just hours ago, Nanos stated, "I believe that the victim was held near the home." This assessment is based on physical evidence patterns, specifically the lack of a clear exit trail on long-range highway cameras, suggesting the Phantom may have a bolt hole or safe house within the Tucson area itself. The desperation of the situation reached a new peak with the FBI's latest forensic release. They have identified that the Ozark Trail backpack carried by the suspect was likely purchased at a Walmart in the Tucson metro area within 2 weeks of the crime. Agents are currently scrubbing thousands of hours of retail surveillance to match a face to the mask. Meanwhile, the $1 million reward offered by Savannah Guthrie has led to a flood of over 50,000 calls, but none have yet provided the proof of life the family so desperately craves. With Nancy's vital heart medications still sitting on her kitchen counter 26 days later, the fact remains that this is no longer just a kidnapping investigation. It is a race to prevent a biological tragedy. As the final hours of February 2026 approach, the Nancy Guthrie case stands at a haunting crossroads. The known facts that initially painted a picture of a random crime have been systematically dismantled. 1 minute ago, the FBI released a concluding statement for the month, reinforcing that the suspect, the man in the Ozark Trail backpack, remains the primary key to the mystery. The new motive has shifted from a simple burglary to a targeted money-making scheme that exploited Nancy's connection to her world-famous daughter, Savannah. Yet, despite the $1.1 million total reward, the 70,000-plus tips, and the deployment of signal sniffer technology to track her pacemaker, the 84-year-old grandmother remains missing. The final twist in this chapter of the investigation comes from the community itself. Residents of the Catalina foothills, once a bastion of desert tranquility, have begun installing high-grade security shutters and private patrol guards, effectively turning the neighborhood into a fortress. The disconnect at 1:47 a.m. on February 1 didn't just take Nancy, it took the sense of safety from an entire city. Investigators are now poring over a new set of data, the digital pings of every cell phone that was active near the home during the suspect's scouting trips in mid-January. They are no longer looking for a ghost. They are looking for a digital footprint that matches the physical one left in the desert dust. The story of Nancy Guthrie is currently a book with its final pages missing. Savannah Guthrie's empty chair at the Today Show serves as a daily, silent reminder of the high stakes. As the investigation enters March 2026, the case has changed everything we thought we knew about the vulnerability of our private lives in a public world. The search continues in the washes of Tucson and the digital back alleys of the dark web, fueled by a family's refusal to give up. The motive was greed, the twist was the predator's patience, but the ending everyone hopes is still a miracle.